Hey guys, and welcome back to another video by TheYellowPolarBear, and today we're going to be looking at the development history of one of the more controversial versions of Windows. Windows 8 is what we're going to be looking at today. So we have 4 virtual machines here, excluding all the other ones of course. We have Windows 8 Developer Preview, which came out in 2011. It came out 2 years after Windows 7. Consumer Preview came out at around the same time. Release Preview came out pretty close to when Windows 8 came out. I think it was like 6 months. And the final version of Windows 8 Pro, which came out I think around October. So we'll be looking at how all these 4 versions of Windows 8 change over time. Now of course these aren't the only beta builds of Windows 8, but these are the more popular ones and the more notable ones with the more dramatic changes. So let's power on Windows 8 Developer Preview. So to start off, you did have the new startup screen with the spinning wheel and the logo. The logo was just Windows Developer Preview, as opposed to the final version, which had the new Windows logo, which was the 4 boxes, as opposed to Windows 7 and Vista, where it had the kind of like shiny 4 flagged red, blue, yellow, green logo. Now one thing to note about this version of Windows 8, when you set it up you are not able to customize it actually, and I don't think you're able to customize it at all, because you need a product key, and I don't think there were product keys given out to the public when this was released. Now you can see the profile picture is a bit disoriented. It looks a bit strange and a bit odd, and also says Windows Developer Preview down at the bottom. And yeah, it also has these versions, all the versions that we're looking at today, except for of course Windows 8 Pro, they feel a lot like Windows 7. So we booted this up, and I haven't made any changes to this virtual machine, other than of course adding Firefox Quantum from this year to be precise. Now let me just change the resolution so it actually fits my screen. I think VMware crashed a little bit. Alright, well, I'm back now. So I got the issue sorted out. So as I was saying, I've installed nothing on this virtual machine except for Firefox Quantum. It doesn't work, surprise surprise. Now when at the beginning of the video you may have saw that there's a bunch of apps here. Well, these are pre-installed because after all this is the developer preview. This is meant to showcase what Windows 8 and its apps could do. Now as you can see, it looks a bit different. Some of the icons are a lot different, like News, Store, and if we go into Store, it unfortunately doesn't really work, because it says Windows Store is available in Windows Developer Preview, and in the Windows 8 Developer Preview you can't drag down from the top to exit an app. Instead you have to press the Start button or Start key, whatever you want, and takes you back, and it automatically closes that app. So you couldn't really multitask with stuff in this. Or maybe you can, let me check. Yeah, you can't go to the desktop or anything from what I know. And well, as you may have noticed, this version comes with a Start button. This so I don't think the consumer preview came with one. So when you hover over it, it's kind of like the Charms bar. This was meant to be a Charms bar, but as you know, to access it in Windows 8, you had to go to the top right corner and slide your mouse cursor down, and it would have popped up. So here you have search. Still brings up the search bar. So you can see that they developed a lot of the Windows 8 features. Now, one thing to note is, yeah, it still looks a lot like Windows 7. For example, the ribbon bar in Windows Explorer is still a lot like Windows 7. It has the yellow highlight, it has the gradients, has all that stuff, the icons, And new Java version of Java is ready to be installed. Wowee. Yeah, and it also has Aero as well, in case you weren't able to notice. And these buttons are a lot different too. So if we were to go into personalize, you can see that you can still customize it. And as you know, in Windows 8 there was automatic, which it chooses a color for you based on your background. This was the color was like a big rainbow, but you can easily disable transparency. As you can see, it's not as transparent as it was in Windows 7, but I mean, like, it still works. Color intensity, you know, all that good stuff. And moving on to the Windows sounds, although this was released literally a year before Windows 8 actually came out, it still has some Windows 7 sounds. But it also had like a few Windows 8 ones. I don't think these were in the actual final version of Windows 8 though. Oh, actually these are Windows 8 sounds. These are Windows 7 sounds. So Windows 7 had a bunch of sound schemes. It had a bunch of sound schemes like afternoon, calligraphy, I don't know how to pronounce them, characters, delta. They were all based on themes on Windows 7, and they all had different sounds and characteristics. So yeah. But it turns out, yeah, they're still in Windows 8 developer preview, and some of them were used for early Windows 8 sounds, like the alarm notifications. But there were no new Windows sounds in this, and the play Windows Startup sound is actually officially unticked, but when you sign in on Windows 8 Developer Preview, I'm pretty sure it does play the Windows 7 logon sound, and when you shut down, it does play the Windows 7 shutdown sound, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't do that in the Consumer Preview. Also, Windows Basic, yeah, it looks very strange, as you can see, but it feels a lot more like Windows 8, but like the colors are a bit off, and this was just in beta. But yeah, it still would include high contrast, Windows Basic, but of course Windows Aero is always the best. Windows 8 Developer Preview was meant for tablet use, as it was only given out to some select developers on Samsung tablets. So, meaning that it was really meant for tablets. So you could see that Microsoft was trying to push that tablet feel of Windows 8. Not very far away from launch, but of course you can still use it with a desktop PC with no touchscreen like I'm doing now. Now, if you look at some of the apps, they're pretty basic, and so control panel is pretty similar to the final version. Oh, okay, it's still the latest version of Windows. I'm not even actually sure if that's gonna upgrade you to... Oh, can't display the web page, so must be down. Alright. Yeah, personalize. You can't personalize the user and stuff like that. So if we went to lockout computers, yeah, and it plays the Windows logoff sound. The lock screen looks pretty similar. Has icons like internet, date, and time. And yeah, so it plays the Windows logon sound. But yeah, that is Windows 8 Developer Preview. Not really customizable, nothing too exciting, but it was a big step forward in Windows 8 development. So let's shut this down. You know, it's taking a while to shut down, so why don't we just lazily hard shut it down. Well, next we're looking at Windows 8 Consumer Preview. Let's boot it up. Now the splash screen now has an official logo. It is the fish, and it had that more flat anti-skeuomorphic design, because in beta builds of Windows 7 the default background was like this detailed fish that kind of looks similar to Windows 8 one. But to show the new design direction of Windows 8, they redesigned that Windows 7 background and made it more flat and modern. Already we can see that the startup screen is a bit different and a lot more similar to Windows 8 final version, and the profile picture looks a lot more final. And as we can see, the startup screen looks a lot more different, and you can now, like, the Internet Explorer looks different. There are also more apps, and SkyDrive officially came pre-installed with Windows 8 on this final version. So if we go to desktop, we can see the start button is finally disappeared. So that's right, this is one of the first builds of Windows 8 where the start button was officially gone. And the Charms bar was also introduced. It was still very similar to the Windows 8 Charms bar. For example, when you press on search like I did just then, it comes up with the full screen thing and all the apps, settings, files. You can search in Internet Explorer, and yeah, you can also drag down to close apps, meaning that you could multitask. So if I open up weather and I opened up let's just do Xbox Live Games, we can go in the top right corner and drag, and we can multitask. Of course, this wasn't very well developed because, as you can see, like, you don't get a whole much space for two apps. So SkyDrive was also an official app, just like in Windows 8. And yeah, it was called SkyDrive. It was also called SkyDrive when Windows 8 got released, but when Windows 8.1 got released, it was changed to OneDrive, as you know. So let's take a look at some of the changes that Windows 8 Consumer Preview introduced. It still had Aero, and it was pretty similar. The Windows 7 sound schemes were removed, like Afternoon and Delta. And we now have our first glimpse of the new... Oh wait, no we don't. Oh. We got new backgrounds. Yippee. And in the color tab of the consumer preview, it now shows a more final version of the automatic icon. In the Windows 8 developer preview, there was a beta version of Internet Explorer. Now in the consumer preview, this has been upgraded to Windows Internet Explorer 10 Consumer Preview, meaning that it was a more developed version of Windows 10, Internet Explorer 10. The option for adding briefcases were finally removed. Things like the reader were updated and brand new. This was meant to be a PDF reader that was built into Windows 8, but in Windows 10, this was replaced with Microsoft Edge. We now get a new changed PC settings. We still can't customize much, but we can see that we don't have much options for colors. You only get 9 colors to choose from, and they're not a very wide selection, including the styles as well. And we can also see that in PC settings, the description for each setting was removed, because in Windows 8 Developer Preview, under each setting it displayed a description of what the setting featured. Some of the icons were changed. For example, in the store in Windows 8 Developer Preview, the color was orange. It is now changed to blue, and we also have more additional apps and improved ones like weather and calendar, also people and Xbox. We also got a beta version of what Microsoft Solitaire Collection would have looked like when it got released on Windows 8. However, it was very glitchy and very into beta. As you can see, it looks nowhere near what the final looked like, and it performed very terribly. This might be a virtualization issue, but I'm not too sure. And when clicking on the deal cards up here, sometimes one click isn't enough. See, I just click once and it doesn't even work. Sometimes you have to double click. As you can see, the response time on this is very terrible, and there is clear input lag. But as you know, this will be later improved when Microsoft Solitaire Collection got released in Windows 8. The Show Desktop button finally disappeared and was just a hidden icon now. So users would usually find this blank space here wondering what it is, but it's still a Show Desktop icon. For those people who are curious, the peak at desktop no longer shows a bunch of glassy feel to it. it now just shows the normal flat rectangular box with no sort of style to it. This also introduced a more focused approach on Xbox Live. As I talked about earlier, Xbox Live was updated and it was introduced in Windows 8 Developer Preview, but added more features in Windows 8 Consumer Preview. And as you can see, it comes pre-installed with 2 Xbox Live games, Solitaire and Pinball FX2. So now, let's shut down Windows 8 Consumer Preview, as you can now finally do it in an easier way with the Charms bar. Now we're going to look at Windows 8 Release Preview, which was only released a few months before the Windows 8 actually got released to the public. So, let's see how similar it is to Windows 8. The splash screen for Windows 8 Release Preview is just the word Windows. It is Windows 8 Release Preview. There were some new apps added to this version of Windows 8, including news, sports, and travel. Most of these apps got reskinned in their colour, and most of these were actually used in the final version of Windows 8, including the fact that Mail was now skin tone or cyan colour, Calendar was now purple, and Camera was more reddish colour. As you can see, the customization of the start menu is now way more customizable compared to the consumer preview. In the consumer preview, you only had 9 options of single colours. Now you have the same amount of options you get in Windows 8, including the accent colours. Surprisingly, this version of Windows 8 still had Aero, and in fact it was way more transparent and was a lot more similar to Windows 7. This change is quite odd considering that they actually bothered to make Aero a lot more similar to Windows 7, considering that in only a few months' time Windows 8 was going to be released and it had no Aero whatsoever. Hovering over to the Start button, you now no longer get a big black border as you got in Windows 8 Consumer Preview, and it is now a lot more smaller and a lot more clean, resembling the final version of Windows 8. As expected, the version of Internet Explorer has changed to Windows Internet Explorer 10 Release Preview. The cursor in this version of Windows also changed to the Windows 8 cursors, including the more simple version of the loading sign and the normal default cursor without the small gradient. This version of Windows 8 also had a statement in the gadgets section that said, to give you more relevant content, some gadgets may download data from the internet or send your current location to Microsoft. For more information, read the privacy statement. However, in the final version of Windows 8, gadgets were removed due to privacy reasons and bug reasons. Ironically, this statement literally said why gadgets were going to be removed, without saying they were actually going to be removed. The minimize, maximize, and close buttons are also more modern and flat, and disabling transparency looked a lot like what Windows 8 actually looked like. Strangely enough, this version of Windows 8 still mostly featured Windows 7 sounds. However, did introduce what some of the Windows 8 sounds look like, including Calendar Reminder, and other ones like Alarm 01, Alarm 02, Ring 01, and Ring 02. PC settings now has a few more sections added to it, showing that Control Panel was planned to have a big transition. Other than this, there weren't a whole lot of changes done to Windows 8 Release Preview, besides the fact that it looked a lot more like Windows 8 with the whole mouse cursor, and introduced new Windows sounds and added more apps. So, now let's look at how approximately 6 months of development affected the final version of Windows. Now, let's look at Windows 8 Pro, the final version of Windows 8. Well, the final version of Windows 8 is Windows 8.1, but today, let's say we're looking at Windows 8.0 Pro. Let's boot it up. As I stated in Developer Preview, Consumer Preview, and Release Preview, the splash screen was going to be changed in a final version of Windows 8. And as you can see, this was when the new logo got introduced. Oh, and I also forgot to mention one thing about the Windows 8 Release Preview, and also the Consumer Preview. The startup and shutdown sound for Windows 7 was removed. Why am I saying this? Well, the log-on and log-off sound was still featured in the Windows 8 Developer Preview, which was the first version we looked at. However, through some modifying, as you can see, you can actually turn on the Windows 7 startup sound, but this only really played when your computer restarted, turned off after a hard shutdown, you edit some things in the registry editor. You can also do this in Windows 10. Let's log in. Also, before you log in, you can see that Windows 8 also introduced an alert for Windows Update saying, sign in and install important updates. There was also,
make your computer easier to use.
Windows
will read and scan this list.
As you can see, the live tiles were finally introduced in Windows 8, or at least you could actually use them. The travel app and weather app, and also Bean app, were mostly users. And since this is an activated version of Windows 8, we can take a look at the customization options. You now get a lot more styles, to be exact 20 styles, and I think in the Windows 8 release preview you only got like 5. The colours are still the same though. The photos icon was also changed to a landscape and a flower on a piece of paper. The store icon was also changed, and you can now actually access it. As you can see, Aero was officially removed in the final version of Windows 8, meaning that there's no gradients on the taskbar, and the minimize, maximize, and close buttons were a lot more flat. They no longer had blue on them unless you hovered over them, and of course, the Windows 8 sounds were now introduced. But yeah, as you know, I tried searching up Windows Movie Maker earlier on, but Windows 8 no longer features Windows Live applications. As you know, Windows 7 came with a few Windows Live applications, like I think it came with Windows Live Messenger, Windows Live Mail, and it came with Movie Maker. All these applications were a part of Windows Live, but Microsoft wanted to transition this to Microsoft accounts when Windows 8 got released, meaning that they were no longer a part of Windows 8 anymore. Oh, and yeah, the UI for Windows Explorer was also finalized to a more flat approach. This might have been featured in the release preview, but I didn't check, so hopefully I'm right. Well, that was just a short bit of the history of Windows 8 development, one of the most hated or controversial versions of Windows ever. Besides, I don't know, Windows ME, which was not even controversial, it was hated. Maybe Windows Vista is more of controversial, but whatever. Maybe you can write down in the comments below what you think the most hated or controversial version of Windows is. Well, let's turn off Windows 8 and leave its development completely behind. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more tech related videos, and I also have other content. I mainly push out gaming and Nintendo related videos, so make sure you subscribe if you're into that type of stuff. Bye.